Now, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the feared boss of Russia's Wagner group, this mercenary army accused of atrocities in Ukraine and across Central Africa. In June, you might remember, Prigozhin seized the world's attention by launching a failed mutiny against President Putin himself. And tonight, he is believed to be dead. A private jet flying from Moscow to St. Petersburg has crashed north of Moscow. Prigozhin's name was on the passenger list, according to Russian authorities and information. Now, videos do appear to show a plane falling from the sky. Eyewitness reports suggest there were loud bangs shortly beforehand. Wagner-linked social media channels accused Russian air defences of shooting down the plane. Putin, of course, branded Yevgeny Prigozhin as treasonous after that failed coup and then exiled him to Belarus. But Prigozhin remained the head of the Wagner group and appeared in a video in Africa only this week. So has Russia's dictator exacted the ultimate revenge for a power play that shocked the world last month, or back in June rather, or as is so often the case in Russia, is there more to this story than meets the eye? For more on this, I'm joined by a big panel this evening. The author of Freezing Order, Surviving Vladimir Putin's Wrath, Bill Browder, joins us once again, as well as the former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove, and dissident diplomat Boris Bondarev, who worked for the Russian permanent mission to the UN at Geneva before resigning in protest over the invasion of Ukraine. Thank you, gentlemen. Boris, I'll start with you then. How reliable is this information that we've got from the Russian authorities, do you think?
Well, it is very hard to judge whether it is reliable or not, because all information flows in Russia are strictly controlled by the government, so they just let it out only what they want to let out. But it seems that, according to all information sources we have now, that it is more likely that Prigozhin is dead than otherwise.
It would seem to be that it's weighted in the favour of him being dead, given, of course, that Putin has branded him a traitor various times, and anybody who gets branded a traitor by Putin tends to end up dead. Sir Richard Dearlove, when you heard the information this evening, what were your thoughts on it?
Well, I wasn't particularly surprised by the news, but on the other hand, I think one approaches the reports with caution. Was Prigozhin on the aircraft? Did it crash? Was it shot down? What were the weather conditions? I mean, there are so many questions to which we don't know the answer. I've seen video clips on the internet. It looks as though it crashed in fine weather. And, you know, if that really is the plane coming down, it almost looks as though it was shot down. No, but there are many questions. I mean, we have to speculate, but the fact that Prigozhin might be dead, as far as I'm concerned, that's unsurprising news. It was a matter of time.
Unsurprising, yes. And Bill, coming to you, unsurprising to many people. Of course, you know, we had the quips and the gaffes almost over the last 2 months since the mutiny, that there would be an open window that Prigozhin would find his way out of, and the rest of it. But in terms of appropriating any kind of value to what has happened this evening, you get people saying, well, it's brilliant news, of course. He was a mercenary boss, if indeed he is dead. But it's also a sign that Putin is strengthened somewhat. Could be read like that.
Absolutely. I mean, the way I look at this whole thing is that the fact that Prigozhin was running around for 2 months, sort of unkilled, you know, that he was still alive, having meetings, being in Moscow, being in St. Petersburg, being in Africa, every day that he was alive, it was another day of humiliation for Putin. Putin is a strong man. He's a dictator. The way he stayed in power for the last 22 years has been by scaring everybody, by sending the message that if you are disloyal and disrespect him, you will end up in jail or dead. And the fact that Prigozhin wasn't dead, it was a humiliation for Putin and sort of opened the door for other people to have a go at Putin. And so for Putin, this is a very good day because he's effectively reestablished his authority. He's put himself back as the boss of the prison yard. And while Prigozhin is an odious, murdering character, I don't think that we should in any way be celebrating this because this only strengthens Putin.
Yeah, indeed. It's sort of a strange mixed celebration for some if they do indeed want to celebrate, of course, the death of a mercenary boss. But as you've laid out there, a lot more complexities to this. And, you know, the old adage that we were going to see Putin flailing with after the coup has not been proven true at all. Let's then talk then, Boris, about the way this may have happened, if we are to believe the reports are true, that Prigozhin was on board. 8 bodies have been supposedly recovered from the crash site, according to Russian authorities, once again, and we are unable to independently verify that beyond the information that we have got. If that is the case, what do you make of the fact that it was a private jet? Do you think that was an error, a weakness of Prigozhin's to choose to travel like that around through Russia?
Well, I've noticed that Prigozhin has so far traveled by his private jets many times since his mutiny. So for these 2 months. So I think it was a very comfortable way of traveling for him. Perhaps he didn't suspect anything. Perhaps if he's really dead by now, he was very naive and not that intellectual kind of person. So he believed the assurances given by President Lukashenko of Belarus or President Putin himself. And so he believed that he was safe and secure, and then that they both would keep their words, and nothing will threaten him, his life, his people, and all. So, well, evidently it's not the case, but it says to all of us again that people in Russian elite on top of Russia are not that clever, are not that intelligent. They mostly behave and think like common criminals without thinking through the consequences of their actions. So we shouldn't be afraid of them, afraid of their strategies, afraid of their mind, anything. We should deal with them for what they are, criminals.
It's some scant reassurance to be had there. Gentlemen, Sir Richard Dearlove, I will come back to you shortly. I'm very interested to know how the security services would behave in a situation like this. But I want to introduce the conversation someone else as well, John Sweeney, who has been reporting from Ukraine, I believe, for 500 and something plus days now. John, you're able to correct me on the exact figure. But how do you think this information will be received by Ukrainians today?
The moment it happened, I ordered a Prigozhin burger and that evening. Sure. So, so there are people saying on a plane to Argentina.
We've got to.
Where,
unfortunately, John, we're struggling to hear you. We've got some connection issues. We'll come back to you in a moment. So I would like to cross back over to Sir Richard Dearlove and just talk to you, given your role, former head of MI6, what the security services, our intelligence services here in Britain might be doing right now in terms of trying to verify this information, what it means for those that are based in Russia as well, in terms of gathering more information and what this means for the outcome of Putin's presidency as well.
Well, obviously there'll be attempts. I mean, this is speculative on my part, but there'll be attempts going on as we speak to verify the story, and there are all sorts of ways and means of doing that, particularly in an aircraft crash, because you've got air traffic control, you've got flight records, you've got all sorts of other sources, half of which are open sources on which you can draw and try to find out the background and the detail. But I mean, I think there will be a reluctance to make any sort of statement or official reaction until the information is clearly and strongly verified. I mean, we used to say when I worked on issues Russian, and I'm talking about Soviet Russia, that it was always better to take the line that nothing in Soviet Russia happened by accident. And I think, you know, in relation to these events surrounding alleged Prigozhin killing, that, you know, this may not be an accident, or one should maybe start from the assumption that it isn't an accident. So I think the same rules apply to Putin's Russia as applied to Soviet Russia, where the issue of, as it were, control. But I think the other thing we ought to reflect on is, you know, there were 9 other people on the aircraft. They are all presumably killed in the crash. I mean, this is an extraordinary series of events, and in a way shows the desperation, disarray and problems that the Russian leadership faces, even if one does see it as a reassertion of Putin's authority.
That idea of nothing happening by accident in Russia, Bill, I know that will chime very true to some of the things you've experienced. But let's talk about that a bit more, relating to Prigozhin and the mutiny, which was exactly 2 months ago to this day. Again, seems a little bit coincidental. The plane would come down today. And again, Putin's aggressive reinvasion of Ukraine happened around the time of an anniversary as well. He is somewhat coordinated in his moves, isn't he?
He's absolutely coordinated, and from Putin's perspective, the thing that always troubled me was why did he not engage in a purge of all these mutinous people like Prigozhin and those who sided with him the day after the mutiny? And what we also know about Putin is that he never forgives, never forgets, and so it seems like he was, from that moment on, planning a massive purge. I think that Prigozhin is the first. I don't think he's the last. I think there are other people involved in this whole exercise that will also find themselves dead. And Putin had to do this. He couldn't not do this if he wanted to stay in power. And so that this is the obvious result of a person who is disloyal and who turned on him, and I guess everybody expected it to happen, and here we are. Unless Prigozhin somehow put his name on the manifest, he's dead, and that's what Putin needs to show everybody else.
And again, that is still a possibility, because anything is possible sometimes when it comes to Russia. And, we are going by this information. As Boris said at the start of this conversation, it seems weighted more likely that Prigozhin is dead as a result of this. But we do have to wait and see a bit more. We were just showing pictures there of Vladimir Putin, President of Russia, from Russian state media at a concert today. These are pictures of him walking onto stage, looking very happy and, doing the old, I'm very busy, nothing to do with what's going on elsewhere. So very interesting to see those. Boris, coming back to you then on Bill's point about why there wasn't a purge of these close, potentially changeable characters in the Kremlin. Prigozhin, nicknamed Putin's chef, obviously was very close to him for many years and then sort of was allowed to go off on one and do what he did in Ukraine and have his mercenary army. Why wasn't there a purge? Why hasn't this been controlled sooner in the Kremlin?
I believe first it's not Putin's habit, tradition to make purges. He likes things go down smoothly and quietly. So there is why I doubt that there will be any significant purges now in the ranks of presidential administration or military or wherever. Why they did not do anything like this sooner in these 2 months, I believe the same reason why they didn't suppress the rebellion, the mutiny on this very day. They just were unable to do that. Everybody saw that Prigozhin Wagner group marched on Moscow without any resistance, without any people trying to block the roads or anything. So if Prigozhin did push further, he may have ended in Moscow and nobody knows what could happen then. So I believe Putin found himself to be, in a very uncomfortable situation. He didn't have enough resources to stop Prigozhin. And when Prigozhin agreed to withdraw, and when they struck a deal with the help of Mr. Lukashenko or without, then Putin was gathering resources. He was waiting for a proper, opportune moment to strike. Today, it is, likely is the day he chose to strike. But Putin, I would like to reiterate that Putin is not that all-powerful that he used to be. And this killing of Prigozhin, if it is by Putin's design, does not strengthen him either. He was weakened and diminished by the mutiny of Prigozhin itself. And his very weak response to that. And now he may try to kill Prigozhin or Mr. Utkin, the right hand of Prigozhin, or someone else, but it will not change the fact that Putin was Putin showed weakness during the mutiny, and it gives a clear signal to anybody who would like to repeat Mr. Prigozhin experience.
Yeah.
They will understand that they just must push to the end, and then they can manage the situation.
It's an ever-moving and worrying situation in terms of that tumult. Look, John Sweeney has managed to rejoin us with a more stable connection. John, just interested to quickly get your thoughts about how this information might be received in Ukraine this evening.
Well, I already know the moment I heard, I ordered a Prigozhin burger, and the waiter in the restaurant I'm in said, "Are you sure he's dead?" And then he laughed. So everybody here knows just how evil, how barbarous, how murderous the Wagnerites have been. They have committed war crime after war crime after war crime. And so there is, this is Ukrainian National Flag Day. Tomorrow is Ukrainian Independence Day. So the mood here in Kyiv is exultant if it's true that he's dead. To be honest, I would put a $5 on him being dead. Tons of my Ukrainian friends are being skeptical. Some are saying, you know, let's see the DNA evidence. Some people are saying he's already in Argentina wearing a wig. But the sense here is this is great because Prigozhin was an evil man. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. But also it weakens Putin. The fact that Putin has had to, it feels like that he has had this man killed means that he is a fragile monster. It means that he is murdering his own people. And that, for the Ukrainians here in Kyiv and across the whole country, it feels like that sooner perhaps than many people in the West think, the comeuppance will come for the master of the Kremlin himself.
I can imagine they are waiting for that day with bated breath. Look, John, Boris, Bill, Richard, thank you very much for making time.